It seems to me that we live in a society that's not terribly good at suffering. It's largely because we don't have to. We have a vast array of tools at our disposal that help us avoid suffering. So if something makes us uncomfortable, most of the time all we have to do is change the channel or go to a different app on our phone or just keep scrolling or, drive a little faster. And then that thing that makes us uncomfortable is out of sight and out of mind. And for the vast majority of us, for the vast majority of our lives anyway, if we experience anything like physical pain or discomfort, there's a pill that we can probably take for that, or some expert somewhere who can do something to take that pain away from us, at least for a little while. We binge Netflix, we sink ourselves into hobbies or work, or we take a nap, or we indulge in comfort food. We're just not big on suffering. We're not big on feeling like we're out of control. We work pretty hard to pretend like those are the sorts of things that we don't have to deal with. But then, every now and then, something happens that reminds us that there is actually a brokenness in the world that is bigger than we are, that we can't escape, that we can't control, that we can't fix, that we can't make right. We live in one of those times right now where we're reminded way more often than we want to be that that's the case. I think about my 8th grade son quite a bit these days. He was looking forward to his graduation. It's just middle school graduation, I want to say. It's not really that big of a deal, except for it is. He was anticipating time with friends and all of the pomp and the circumstance and the good times and the memories that come with this special time, this mile marker in his life. And now, because things have been locked down, because schools have been canceled, because of social distancing, because of loving and protecting our neighbors, there is this sense of loss, this thing that he's never going to get back, that he wanted, that he could have had, but now he can't have. And it dawns on me as a dad who likes to alleviate suffering in his children, who likes to fix things that go wrong, that there's nothing I can do about this. That this is a situation, and his is just one instance of this larger situation that we find ourselves in, but this is a situation that we just can't fix, and we just can't avoid. And this, for what it's worth, is a truth that the Bible has always been clear on. That for all of the good things that happen in our world, for all of the blessings that we have, for all of the stuff that we've got going for us, we live in a world that is ultimately broken and bent and distorted by sin and death. And in a world that is broken and bent and distorted by sin and death, one of the things that was going to happen to us, one of the things we're going to run up against again and again and again, is these things that cause us to mourn, that cause us to grieve, that cause us to cry. And one of the things I love about Christianity, particularly thinking here of Paul's instruction to Christian communities in Romans 12, is that Christian communities have never, when they're at their best, run away from the brokenness of the world. They've never tried to minimize it. They've never tried to sweep it under the rug. They've never tried to kind of whitewash it. They've never been prone to, in their best moments, Pollyannish sentiments like, oh, it will all be okay, or this too will pass, or don't worry, God has a plan. Of course, in our worst moments, we have done some of those things, but at our best, we have always said, yes, the world is broken, and we are going to be the ones who sit here and cry with you, who mourn with you, who let it be bad with you and broken with you. And we will walk with you through that dark place and that shadow. And so I so love Paul's instructions in Romans 12 when he says, older translations, I grew up, mourn with those who mourn. I was reading through a variety of translations earlier when I was getting ready for this, and I love the way the Common English Bible says it. He says, cry with those who cry. And we are called, Paul says, to be the ones in the darkness of the world The darkness of the world, by the way, that we can't always fix, that we can't always make right, that we can't always explain, that we can't always avoid, that we can't always do anything about. We are the ones Paul calls us to be the ones in the middle of that darkness who stands by those who cry and says, we can't do anything about it, but we sure are here with you. And when I think about that calling that he gives us in Romans 12, I think about Jesus in John 11, one of my favorite stories in the Gospel of John. This is, of course, when Lazarus, his friend, gets sick and Lazarus dies. And Jesus doesn't get there before he dies, and as he shows up a few days late. Martha comes out to him, and Martha's life has been torn apart. Her heart is broken, and she comes out and she says, if only you had been here, you could have done something about this. We've seen you do it before. If only you were here. And then Mary comes out, and Mary, with grief in her voice, her world falling apart, she says to him, if only you had been here, you could have done something about this. We've seen the miracles that you perform. If only you had been here. And it's at that point in John 11 that Jesus, knowing exactly what he's getting ready to do, knowing that he's getting ready to walk up to that tomb, have them roll away the stone, say, Lazarus, come forth, and he's going to come back from the dead. Knowing that, Jesus sits in that moment with Mary and Martha and their world falling apart in the midst of the darkness and their grief overwhelming them. And the text says, very simply, Jesus wept. That God himself, in the midst of the brokenness, when things just aren't right, when we can't avoid what is wrong with the world, when we're grieving what is wrong in the world, God is in that moment weeping with us. And his people, us, we're called to be that presence in the lives of those around us.